G'day everyone and welcome to this video on some of the do's and don'ts with buying your first car. And of course we have a whole stack of stuff to get through today, and there will be notes available because we can't cover everything in this 20-minute video. So there are all sorts of reasons why people buy cars. Some people want small cars for city dwelling, some want large vans if they're drummers or musicians or motorcycle riders, some want wagons, all sorts of choices, sports cars, you name it. And so we'll try and cover most of the stuff pertinent to buying a car in this video. If there are additional questions, as I said before, come and see me. Look at the screen, Charlie, because otherwise you're veering off. I'm over here. Mate, what are you doing?
I'm sorry. Okay.
There are all sorts of factors in buying a car, of course. Some people look for cars cheap to run, cheap spare parts, cheap servicing, all sorts of stuff. And each car has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. And so there's no such thing as a perfect car in this imperfect world. So sit back, hope you enjoy the video. Any questions, pop your hand up and it'll get answered pronto. Now, something that should always be recommended to new motorists is to join the RACV. Membership is a nominal annual charge and provides a host of services to members. Information on these services can be accessed via their website at racv.com.au. They also offer Free to Go. Free to Go is a program designed for all 18 to 20 year olds and Year 12 students. It gives access to advice on buying a car, getting a licence and road safety. The importance of a PPSR check can't be understated. It's mandatory for anyone considering the purchase of a car. Their website is ppsr.com.au. Once a small fee is paid, the vehicle's VIN or vehicle identification number is typed in. Then all relevant information will appear, including if it's stolen, if there's any finance owing, or if it's been put on the WOVR or written off vehicle register. If a vehicle is purchased that has past unpaid finance on it, it can be repossessed, leaving the proud new buyer with no car and no chance of a refund. The written off vehicle register is a list of all cars that have been written off due to accident damage or otherwise by insurance companies. It's a government initiative designed to prevent these vehicle identification numbers from being re-stamped or used in stolen cars. The purpose of this is to prevent organised car theft, thereby stopping stolen cars from being rebirthed. So keep in mind there's no such thing as a perfect car. Some are expensive for parts and servicing, some are expensive to insure, some newer cars suffer a lot of depreciation. In fact, the new car will suffer as much as 30% the moment you drive it off the showroom floor. And some have lovely paint jobs on them. Some Japanese cars like Mazdas, Nissans, that sort of thing, have beautiful pearlescent paint jobs that really pop in the sun, but the moment you get a scratch they're almost impossible to match and they can be very expensive to repair. That being said though, there are a lot of very good cars and very suitable cars for the young motorist, but there are a few things you need to do. So, whether you're considering a small car, a large car, a sports car or a people mover, be prepared to walk away from any car that's been modified. Now, it isn't possible in this video to list all the prior modifications to look out for when considering a new car, but there are two I'd like to mention. The first is the fitting of non-standard stereo equipment. More powerful stereo gear will in most cases require larger and sometimes additional holes to be cut for speakers. If these holes are within the structure of the car, it will mean the car is not and never will be roadworthy, and so costly repairs will ensue. More powerful stereo equipment will also require heavier wiring and or upgrades to the vehicle's charging system. I'll give a demonstration to that end shortly. Wheels and tyres are another frequently modified area, which can mean the car's ride and handling can be compromised, and so insurance cover can indeed become jeopardised. Don't forget that engineers designed the car and they designed it for standard equipment. Now, modified wiring looms do cause a lot of problems in cars. They can cause reliability issues and in worst case scenario they can cause a fire. So when we select wires for a car, we need to determine how much power is going to go through it. That way the wire can stay nice and cool and safe. Now, a lot of people don't think of that when they start wiring in extra lights and big stereos and all that sort of stuff. All it does is cause a lot of trouble. And here lies another issue. Every time a claim is made to an insurance company, they send an assessor out to have a look at the car to determine what caused the accident or the fire. Now, if they determine that an electrical fault was caused by bad wiring, the insurance isn't covered. You're not covered at all. In fact, you're on your own, so if the car burns to the ground, you've just wasted all your money. So here we have an electrical experiment. We've got a car battery here, some jumper leads, which are nice big fat wire, onto a starter motor, and that's the electric motor that starts the car's engine for you. And if we make a circuit, she works. And now we have that little grey one. Let's see what happens now. See the smoke coming off it? That's the best way to get a car fire. And you can see here where the wire started to burn. And that's what can happen if your wire isn't rated for the amount of power you're putting through it. Now all cars have their advantages and disadvantages. 90s cars like this one are cheap to buy, but they're less efficient than the modern cars, and they're also not quite as safe. Now some cars are very cheap, and here's a 90s full-size sedan. It's a Ford. These can be had for around $1,500 with a roadworthy, and they do have advantages. They've got anti-lock brakes, they've got airbag, four-wheel disc brakes, all that sort of stuff, air conditioning, electric windows, you name it. Now the problem with these is they're getting old now, so they're not quite as reliable as they were when they were a little bit younger, and also, given that they're a big six-cylinder engine, they're very heavy on petrol. Japanese cars are brilliant. Mazda, Toyota, Nissan, Subaru, they're all brilliant cars and super reliable, but parts tend to be a bit dearer for them. That's not so bad because they don't tend to need them as much. Small 5-door hatchbacks like this are very, very suitable. These are of course known as a 5-door because of the 4 passenger doors and also the tailgate at the back. Now these are great. They've got everything that opens and shuts, they're modern, they're safe, all the safety equipment's there with them. The only disadvantage with these cars, I should say, is the fact that they're European. This is a German car, a Volkswagen, which means servicing and parts can be quite expensive for them. Even a regular service can be $1,000 on one of these if you take it to a Volkswagen dealer. Now, these cars also have hill start assist on the manuals. And what that means is you don't have to do handbrake starts on a hill. You can just let the clutch out and drive off normally, which makes driving a manual car much easier for those that aren't all that comfortable with it. But they are a tremendous car indeed. Little 1.2 litre engine, very economical on fuel. Now cars aren't always as they seem. In fact, some cars are made by other manufacturers that you wouldn't know about. Holden Astras, for example, are made by Opel. They're a German car. And this Mini, which should be a British car you would think, is also the same thing. It's made by BMW and it is an absolutely gorgeous car to drive. But being German, it's at the top of its game in terms of quality, but service charges and spare parts are prohibitively expensive for them. So it's important to pick the car that's suitable for your needs. And so this is a more modern car. This is a Commodore. It's a few years old. It has lots of safety kit in it. There's about 6 airbags, this sort of stuff. But some of the airbags are in these pillars here and they're very difficult to see around. And you really have to look either side of them. So it does raise the question as to whether or not they're as safe as what they're supposed to be. Now, also in the modern cars you'll find the waistline's a lot higher, so visibility is obstructed a little bit, particularly at the back. And this one's particularly bad for rearward visibility because there's an oven in there. Turn around and have a look. See? I can't see anything. So that's not very safe, is it? So don't carry an oven in the back of your car while you're driving. Another thing that's not great in terms of safety is distractions within the car. Now, using mobile phones and so forth is illegal and it's punishable. But another thing that poses a hazard is the IQ system, the radio and all the heating controls. Everything is controlled through here. Most modern cars have some form of screen that displays all that sort of information, and they are a distraction because you're taking your eyes off the road. So it's always a good idea when you're using this sort of stuff to do it when the car's stationary, not while you're driving, because it's taking your concentration away from you. I need to get home. I had too much tea and need a wee. Now my personal preference is to drive a manual car, and the reason is you're always working. You don't become complacent to your driving. You're always working, changing gears, so forth. It keeps you awake and keeps you more alert. I always find with me, and it's only an opinion, I get sleepy in an automatic and I don't think they're nearly as safe. And of course the other issue with it is that if something does go wrong with the engine management, and it's very unlikely, but if it does and the engine runs away, you can put your foot on the clutch even though the engine's revving hard, it's disconnected from the rear wheels. Now, you can do that in an automatic, putting it in neutral, but some automatics have a lockout so that they don't let you do that. But a manual's very safe by disconnecting all the drive line just by pushing your foot on the clutch. Now, one safety feature in the more modern car is the reverse camera. This car doesn't have one. It's got a set of sonar type receptors on it. So as you're reversing, and I'm just going to try not to hit my gate, as you're reversing, it'll start showing up like that, and it's an audible cue, and it goes red when you're about to hit something. Now, far more superior to that is a reverse camera. And this car has a reverse camera. So when you put the car in reverse, there's a dog, so you don't go backwards. And here is the typical engine bay in a small transverse engine car. Your front wheel drive cars are all like this. And you can see these rails down here. These are the subframe rails, and that's the structure of the car. Now, it's difficult to see in this car right the way down there. There's a bird crowing there, I wish it would go away. And also under the battery, but I'll show you the same car with no engine in it. And this is an identical car. Now, these dimples here that are pressed into the subframe are normal. They're called crumple zones, and they're designed to collapse in the event of a front-end collision. And that way, less shock is transmitted to the inside of the car where the occupants are. When we talk about things being straight, they're not straight like a ruler, they're just not sort of bent or twisted or sort of ripply. And you can see around here, there's the other rail here coming toward the front, underneath where the battery was on the other car. And there's your crumple zones there too. So all that has to be straight and undamaged. And it's also worth lifting the boot carpet, taking out the spare wheel, just looking at the back as well to make sure it hasn't been hit from behind. And it's a similar story in the back. This of course is a stripped down car, so it makes seeing parts very easy. But lift up the carpet on any prospective purchase and just make sure these are all level. Everything's straight, nothing's crinkled up or hit, pushed in, particularly along the back here, along these sorts of rails here. In some cases, the shiny new car you're considering may have looked like this in recent times. Affordable repair products can tempt the DIY panel beater to earn himself a few dollars pocket money by tackling a job such as this. This can be hazardous if the repairs aren't carried out to industry code. Take a magnet when looking at a car. Although a magnet won't be attracted to an aluminium car, it certainly won't stick to a car full of body filler. Now the bonnets on a lot of cars, this is an old car, this is 1969, the bonnet of this car also has little fold sections that have been pressed into the frame of it. And the reason we have those, and you'll probably see on smashed cars, the bonnet tends to go up like that and then sort of point down. And the purpose of that is so the impact is kept to the front and the bonnet doesn't stay straight and goes straight through the windshield to you. Now most manufacturers have a lot of fittings and fasteners on their cars zinc plated. These are yellow zinc or gold zinc if you like. And they're either that sort of colour or they're a silver type colour. Now the reason they do that is to offer superior corrosion resistance. And this is the sort of thing I'm talking about, that sort of salt and pepper look. Now this car did come from a coastal area and I had a very, very good look at it before we bought it, but there was damage. So keep an eye out for those sorts of things. Now normally in the modern car rust isn't such a big deal, but if that car's from a coastal area, like this one behind me, it really can be. And this is what I'm talking about. I put a windscreen in this car about a year ago and there's a tiny bit of surface rust there. It's only a stain, but behind there was a hole. Now the windshield of a car sits against a lip, just like that, and they put a layer of sealer down and then pop the new window in, just like that. Now, if there's any rust there at all, it won't go away. Now if the windscreen's been fitted poorly and extra sealant's been put there to stop it leaking into the car, that problem's only going to come back in a very short time. And the only way to fix it properly is to cut it out and weld in new metal. Now people don't normally do that on a used car. They do it the quickest and most reasonable way. So it's very important just to have a good look around the edge of the window just to make sure there's no rust. None at all. You see, the problem with rust is that most of the time it starts from the inside out. And so by the time you see it starting to come up in the sills down here, it's quite often too late. In fact, what's a little spot on the front can be rusted out underneath. So the structure of a car is like this. We have the A pillar, B pillar and C pillar. Now, have a look at them. Have a look all in here, underneath where the door seals are, against the pillars, to make sure there's no rust there at all. Have a look down here where the check strap is. Oh, there it is. Make sure there's no rust under there. There's surface rust on the strap, but that's not a big deal. We're looking at structure here, all down through here where the B pillar joins the sill. Get under the back and have a look at the dog leg. This is the dog leg here. That's a very, very prone rusted area on some, well, slightly older cars. But even the modern car can suffer if it's from a coastal area or anywhere where there's a saline environment. Also have a look behind the back wheel in these areas here. Very prone to rusting in some models. So here's a car I'm presently restoring, and I've already welded in 28 patches of new metal to get rid of rust. There's just no quick fix to it. It's a big job. Take a look at the shut lines or the door gaps. They should all be even. It'll be a bit of a giveaway if it's been poorly repaired, because they should be even just like that. Older cars like this one aren't so even. This car was manufactured in 1969 and the quality control was very, very different back then. And this car has huge door gaps. Another thing you should consider is the resale value of the car. So, what's its value going to be like when you're finished with it? And a few things can influence that. One is the colour. So pick a car that's a good colour and a safe colour. Whites and reds and yellows and colours like that are very safe. But if a car's a funny colour, well, you might get it a bit cheaper, but when it comes time to sell it, you might not get your money back. Now, there are two finishes you'll find on a car. One is a metallic, and if you look very closely, I don't know if this camera can zoom in close enough, but if you look very closely, you'll see it's got tiny little metal fragments in it. Now, when they paint metallics, they put a clear coat on top, and then they buff it, so the metallic is safely beneath the clear. Solid colours don't need that. And then there are solid colours like this which have no metallic component. Now, what happens after a bit of time is that the clear can delaminate. In other words, it can come off the metallic beneath. This shows it very clearly here. Now, there's no quick fix for this. That has to be repainted. And you'll find that a lot of older cars have that happen to them, particularly if they've been out in the sun. And it starts happening all over the car as well. So when it comes time to sell a car that has paint that's delaminating like this, you won't get much for it because that really requires a new paint job. So it's always important to check the service history on a car. You normally find that in the glove box underneath the sick bag. And it should have all its books with it, with an account of its service history. And it should be all documented here with torn off tabs and the mileage recorded on each tab. And that should correspond with the mileage on the odometer. So even though the service book says the car's been looked after, make sure you have a look for yourself. So on those modern cars, the areas you need to look at are colour coded. For example, the radiator coolant, the windscreen washers, which isn't a big deal I suppose, and the engine oil. And it's important to check the engine oil just to make sure it's nice and clean. But that's a little bit down from the top, but it's not too bad. You can see through it. That's good. Also have a look around the brake fluid. The brake fluid should be transparent. It shouldn't be opaque or foggy or anything like that. If it is, brake fluid is hygroscopic, which means that it stores moisture. So when it gets like that, it isn't roadworthy. Look at the coolant. You can't see on this one, there's no reservoir, it's sort of buried, but that's nice and clean as well. It should be clean. It shouldn't be a rusty colour. It should either be a transparent green or red. Also have a look at the power steering. That's nice and full as well. So in the older engine bay, things are a little bit different. They're not colour-coded to the extent that the new ones are, but the automatic transmission one is, and that's something very, very important to check. So we pull it out, wipe it. And put it back in and check. Now it should be clear and red. It shouldn't be orange, it shouldn't be tan, it shouldn't smell burnt. Transmissions that have fluid like that can cost many thousands of dollars in the modern car. And again, make sure you check the engine oil. It should be, this one's very clean because I've just serviced it. And there she's there, that's how it should look. And if it's milky at all, that's really bad. It can be head gaskets, it can be all sorts of trouble. Also, when you're looking in the engine bay, make sure there's no overspray, the colour of the car on here, on any of the wires or anything. Oversprays when they paint the car. The spray paint can sort of make its way around. Of course, cars are painted empty. They shouldn't have any of this sort of stuff in them. But some poor repairers will actually get overspray or bits of that spray paint on the ancillaries, and that's how you know it's a dodgy job, or it's one of the giveaways anyway. So have a good look. You might not be a mechanical engineer, but there are obvious signs which even the layman can see. So, let's look at tyres. And these are wonderful tyres. Look, they've got lots and lots of tread, all that sort of stuff. And you can see in there these raised parts there, they're the wear indicators. So once the tyre wears down to that raised section in there, and you can see it goes all the way along, that's when it's due for replacement. Now this tread is in wonderful condition. The shoulder's in good condition, and you feel those, and it shouldn't feel like a sawtooth arrangement. In other words, it's smooth one way and rough the other, because that indicates the front alignment needs attending to, and the wall's in good condition. But the bit you're interested is in this date here. Now tyres are like food, they have a use by date. This one has an X, which doesn't mean anything, 4414. That's the 44th week of 2014. And that's important to know that, because tyres have a shelf life of 5 years. And this is precisely what I'm talking about. These tyres here have great wear, they're not worn, they're looking really good condition. Sidewall's in wonderful nick as well, but this isn't roadworthy. Where's the date? There it is. This was made on the 20th week, 2003. So, 8 years ago, this was out of date. So, it'll go hard and it won't have any traction. You'll find it'll wheel spin and slide at the front, all sorts of things in the wet weather. So, if a car you're buying has tyres like that, which are well out of date, they're not roadworthy. Another thing is, of course, in checking your tyres, is the side wall. This is the side wall here, and of course you've got your tread up the top, and we've got the shoulder. Now, this one has a little chunk taken out of it. Straight away, instant roadworthy fail. And so have a look for those sorts of things as well. Even if there's not a chunk taken out like that, and there's just a split, a little crack, that tyre is unroadworthy. Oh, I absolutely love yogurt. Go through the whole car when you look at it to make sure everything works. Get them to demonstrate how everything works. If the person's confident that they're selling a really good car, they'll be more than happy to prove it to you. But go through everything. Take your time and make sure they're showing you absolutely everything that you need to see. When you take the car for a test drive, just feel it. The steering wheel shouldn't want to track either way. It should want to go straight ahead. Now, if it wobbles like this sort of thing when you're driving, it could be a front end, a wheel balance problem, or it could even be something more sinister like a bubble in the tyre, or worse still, it could be a buckled rim. So, you want to just make sure that the steering feels good and sharp, and the car goes where you want it to. Another thing to keep in mind is the roads are cambered. They actually rise like that. The reason for that is so water can disperse off it, but even so the car should track straight. This is a little bit out because the road is cambering quite severely, but it should track quite straight. If it wants to dive in one direction or the other, again, it can be a problem. It could be uneven tyre wear, it can be uneven tyre pressure, it could be brake issues, all sorts of stuff. And again, when you put the foot on the clutch and stop the car, it should stop straight. There shouldn't be an issue with it. Make sure the heating works, the air conditioning works. You really need to have a good look at it. Also, your steering should be direct. Now, I'm going to go around a roundabout, and this car's a front wheel drive. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around like this, quite a tight turn. Now what I'm doing is I'm checking the front end CV joints, the constant velocity joints. And they're the little knuckles that sit inside the axles to make that, I'm getting fogged up, that control, they just do, right? Well, the best way to check them is in a tight circle. So you would go right in a tight right hand, left in a tight left hand, and that will check the integrity of those joints. They're quite expensive to replace. All front wheel drives have them. Other thing that's a road with the item is make sure the indicators self-cancel, and I can go through there, and they do. So it's all good. So look after your car, enjoy it, keep it nice and clean, and most importantly of all, keep it serviced properly. And then you've got some hope of recovering all that money you've spent on it in the first place. You don't have to trash your first car, try and get your money back for it. So, the choice is yours. What's my opinion? Well, I'm a VACC mechanic, and much of my experience was working for a Nissan and Prestige car dealership where I was a roadworthy examining mechanic. Like most mechanics, I'd always endorse a Japanese car such as a Toyota, a Nissan, Mazda or a Subaru, or a locally produced car such as a Holden or Ford. But whatever the case, remember that the best points about a car are not always visible. Whatever the case, buy the newest car you can afford. It'll be equipped with more safety gear, be more reliable, and it'll be kinder to the environment than an older vehicle would be. But remember this, cars represent huge freedom to new motorists, but that freedom can be taken away quickly if the car you buy is financed. Save up and buy your own car. That way you won't need to be locked into some job you don't enjoy just to pay the finance company back. So in summary, don't be in a hurry to buy a car and don't tolerate any pressure to sign on the dotted line. Money is very difficult to make and all too easy to spend. Take your time, get a PPSR check and let the RACV or another reputable firm go over the car with a fine-tooth comb. Also, take your parents and friends with you, and above all else, take care on the roads. Obey the laws and stay safe. That way you'll have a lot of fun and gain the most with your new car. See you later.